we're going to continue to operate the company exactly as we have before, except that we've got a plan that we'll agree on that we don't know what it is yet, because I haven't dived into your company enough to know where the biggest opportunities are. But we will collaborate together to create a plan for how we're going to move forward. And we know that part of that plan is acquiring additional companies that will need to be integrated into this company.
So last week I asked a question about an HVAC company. I told you that they have had 100% growth year over year, and we talked about earnout being a good potential. I did my calculation in the background, and considering 80% earnout, it still didn't seem so favorable, to be honest, for me. So I went with a different route. I presented that actually I had a call with him yesterday. So I presented to him a roll-up strategy and just went on a whiteboard and basically presented what it looks like. And he's quite interested. What does my first day look like if we're going into the entire merger side of it? My question is, how far do you go in terms of the equity left over for the seller at the end? Like, what is the right balance? How much am I going to have? How much he's going to have as well?
So it's a kind of a per deal basis. If you were acquiring, this is if you're acquiring their company, correct?
So I wanted to, we're partnering up, let's put it this way, partnering up for the roll up, but I was gonna jump in with 20% equity, and every milestone we hit for certain SDE milestone, then I'll get more equity into their business. So I went as far as 80% at the end for me and 20% for him, and still did calculation. His final basically roll up exit would be more than what he's asking right now.
Okay.
60% more than what he's asking right now.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure again, how this need to be presented. I'm still a newbie in that area.
Well, so a lot of it has to do with the value. So typically you would either be acquiring the company and they would have a retained interest, and your platform company that is doing the acquisition would acquire control, and you would acquire control immediately. So you would acquire, say, 80% now, and that would be at the valuation now. And then they would have a carried interest of 20%, and the 20% is going to be worth 20% of whatever your final exit value is on the roll up. So if the roll up increased the value overall of the company by, say, 6 times, which would be fairly, common,
Yep.
then they would be receiving 6 times 20% value, right? 6 times 20%, 120% of the value that they got for the 80%, right? So they would end up making more on the end than they made on the front, even though they've only retained 20. You would have your 80%, which would increase also 6 times in value, right? So you'd have a 48%
Yep.
increase. I mean, excuse me, a 480% increase in
Percent
yours.
increase.
And that's how, or 4.8 times. That's how that would normally work. They're going to ask me a bunch of questions, and we'll talk about day one here in a second. But in terms of when you're kind of doing your math and showing them that this is a good thing for them, it's like, hey, if you sold your business right now, and let's say, just so we can do math, let's say that if you sold your business right now for $1 million and you sold the whole thing, you have $1 million. If you sell me 80% now, you have 800,000 in value that's coming to you, right? And then your 20% carried interest is going to ultimately, in our model, be worth 6 times that. So your 200,000 is going to be worth $1 million too. You'll ultimately literally get twice what you would get, because you'll get 800 on the front committed acquisition for the 80%. And at the end of the day, your 20% carried over will be worth 1.2. 800,000 plus 1.2 equals 2 million, which is literally double what you would get if you sold it all to me right now.
I don't have a platform company at this point. So
Okay.
that's why I went with the earning. But should I even go with the earning now Now I'm
Well, I mean,
questioning
you have
myself.
you have a platform company as soon as you form it, right? Your first acquisition. So you have an acquisition company that's your roll-up co or hold co. And then the first acquisition that you make ideally is the platform company. So you'll have a platform as soon as you do the deal. You still have the story of what you're going to do, that you're selling the first company that you acquire that is your platform company. Now, once you do the deal, you do have a platform and they've got a receivable of 800K and you've got a payable of 800K and they've got 20% carried interest and you've got 80% ownership in the whole. So for first day, to me, it's look, I don't know what the first day looks like, but it's not going to really look that different than what you have right now, because we're going to continue to operate the company exactly as we have before, except that we've got a plan that we'll agree on that we don't know what it is yet, because I haven't dived into your company enough to know where the biggest opportunities are. But we will collaborate together to create a plan for how we're going to move forward. And we know that part of that plan is acquiring additional companies that will need to be integrated into this company. But until we have professionalized and optimized this first company, we won't have systems that we feel confident will apply to the other companies. When we do, and maybe they're all there and I just don't know it yet, but I won't know that really until we talk and say, this is how we're planning on going. Now, okay, let's project ourselves into, we've identified our first company. Now we're going to do diligence on that company to see how much of a challenge will it be to integrate their culture, their systems, their back office, all of that kind of stuff into ours. And then we will decide what is the plan for doing that. But if we try to do it now before we have any of that information, we're just kind of guessing, and we know that we will be likely wrong because there are too many variables.